This episode is brought to you by The Science of Scaling. And The Science of Scaling is a podcast that, honestly, you should check out.
Yeah, it's called The Science of Scaling, and it's all about how to scale a business successfully, whether it's how to find outside capital or what to look for in your very first sales hire.
It's a new show hosted by Mark Roberge. She's the best-selling author of The Sales Acceleration Formula. He's also a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School and the founding CRO of HubSpot.
One thing that Mark mentions in the show is whether your company is valued at $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, the failure rate is the same, which means we suck at scaling.
In each episode, you'll hear interviews with people like Kyle Parrish, the VP of Sales at Figma, and Kevin Egan, the head of sales at Atlassian.
I've checked out a few episodes of The Science of Scaling, and it's great. Like, for me, I run a company as a bootstrap company. We're not the kind of company that's raised capital, but even still, things like sales, that's super important, and it's the lifeblood of our company. So for me, it's definitely helpful to hear how other people have sort of, who have been there and done it before, how they're actually approaching scaling. So go on in your favorite podcast app, whatever it might be, and search for The Science of Scaling. That's The Science of Scaling. Check it out. I think you're really going to enjoy it. This episode of Rocketship.fm is sponsored by Industry, the Product Conference. This October, gather with hundreds of product managers and product leaders from all around the world for 2 days of keynote talks, challenging working sessions, interactive discussions, social events, and more. Or add a third day and take part in half-day workshops with some of today's top product management facilitators for workshops on leading your teams to innovation, product roadmaps, achieving product market fit, and more. This year's lineup may be the best yet, with keynote speakers including product legend Marty Kagan. He's the author of the book Inspired, which is considered by many to be the seminal book for product managers and product leaders. There's also product positioning expert and author of Obviously Awesome April Dunford, and product leaders from Figma, IDEO, Amplitude, and so many other places. Plus, if you use the code Rocketship, you'll save $100 off your pass. Visit industryconference.com/global for more details. Again, industryconference/global for more information, but pricing increases on the first of the month, so register soon to save.
So as many of you may know, I ventured out this year. I left my job as the chief product officer at Dribbble to start a brand new company, and that company is gigantic. No, really, that's the name. We're actually very small today, but we are the training institute of the future. And my goal is to help you master the new influential disciplines that are driving results within organizations. And we're starting with some absolutely incredible courses like product leadership taught by Ben Foster, the former CPO at Ooomf, deconstructing leadership with Allison Go, formerly of Meta and Amazon. We have revolutionizing marketing with AI, which is taught by Marie Osipova, who is the chief marketing officer at Penny.ai, and an upcoming product management course, which is taught by my co-host, Mike Belcito, along with Anna Marie Clifton of Coinbase and Asana, and Victoria Kennedy, who worked at Axios and Huge, and is now running her own venture capital studio. It's not just video courses. We're combining video lectures with take-home assignments and exercises, and then small group mentorship to really help make this information indelible for you and to help level you up, and all at a cost that most companies' learning and development budget covers. So if you're interested, go to gigantic.is, that's gigantic.is, sign up for a course, and you can actually schedule a call with me, and I'll walk you through everything that you need to know. And if you enroll and let me know that you heard about this on Rocketship, I've got a special discount for you. So go to gigantic.is, sign up today, and start your journey upskilling your product, leadership, and marketing skills. I can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to the Rocketship podcast. I'm Michael Sacca.
I'm Joelle Steiniger.
And I'm Matt Goldman.
And we're having 20-minute talks with entrepreneurs teaching you how to launch your product into revenue.
Check out our book at howtobuildarocketship.com to reserve your launch discount and to download a free chapter.
Today we talked with Mikael Cho, founder of Ooomf. He talks a lot about his unique approach to content marketing, in particular what we've been calling tool-based marketing. He's built a handful of free tools like Unsplash and HowMuchToMakeAnApp.com that help support an audience of people that may one day end up signing up for Ooomf.
So welcome to the Rocketship podcast. We're here today with Mikael Cho of Ooomf. Michael, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Ooomf is a fantastic platform that I've used both as a vendor and a service provider. If you haven't, go check it out. That's 3 O's, ooomf.com. So Michael, why don't you tell us a little bit about getting started with Ooomf? Where did the idea come from? And what did those early days look like for you?
Yeah, so the idea for Ooomf actually came, I used to be an independent designer, and I also used to work at a design agency. So sort of all of the problems that I saw in this space during my time doing those two things. And it was just sort of, there's lots of issues. First, finding good projects. There's issues with budgeting. There's issues with payment and making sure everything's on time and deliverables. And it just sort of goes on. And I was really new to the space. So when I sort of came in, I'm like, is this how it's been operating? Is this how it's supposed to be? So immediately after, sort of had these ideas of how this could be improved, and I wanted to do something about it, but I wasn't, my skill as a designer or developer weren't quite there yet. So I ended up leaving the agency I was at. I teamed up with a friend of mine who was a developer. We started doing some contract work on the side, and then we heard about this accelerator program called Founder Field. We had no idea what an accelerator was. And we applied with this name, Ooomf. It wasn't even a thing. Like, it's like, we've got this name and it could be something, but we're not sure. We'll just apply and say it's something right now. We ended up getting an interview, and then we ended up going to the program. This was 2 years ago. So there was a lot of shifts and changes during that program. The main reason we did it was we wanted to focus solely on a product. And we were, doing contract work and doing product is very, very difficult. So we wanted to just have that opportunity to focus just on that. And after 3 to 6 months, we ended up raising funding. We did a $500K small round. Still wasn't fully formed into the idea it is today. But then last February, so this is about 11 months ago, we landed on the idea that it is now. So Ooomf is a pre-vetted network of talent, designers, and developers, and we connect them with high-quality projects. We do vetting on both sides, and we solve a lot of those other issues along the way in the process.
So when you got the funding, what was the idea at that point in time?
So we were in app discovery space, and we were sort of thinking, how could we help developers better market their products? Because in the App Store, there's over 1 million apps that are being submitted this year, and about 3,000 are submitted a day. So how do you sort of stick out of that when you're releasing something? But what we saw was that the majority of apps that were being put into Ooomf, they were sometimes low quality. And you can't really wrap good marketing around that. It's not going to do anything to the app if it's not good in the first place. So that was sort of a major shift in our thinking, and that's when we went back to really solving the core problem of helping people build better technology.
This episode is supported by the AWS Insiders podcast. AWS Insiders is a fast-paced, entertaining, and insightful look behind the scenes of AWS and cloud computing. Hosts Raul Submaranian and Hillary Doyle dig into the current state and the future of AWS by talking with people and companies that know it best. It's a show that's full of opinions, takeaways, and untold stories about the challenges, innovations, and mind-blowing promise of cloud computing. I checked out AWS Insiders, and look, it is a fantastic show, and it's perfect for anyone in tech who's looking for some of those behind-the-scenes stories, for some reassurance that, things are a little nuts everywhere, and everyone is struggling with a lot of the same problems. The first episode of season 2 is all about filling the cloud talent gap, and it's an interesting discussion on what do we do to help to staff up internally What are some of the challenges that companies are facing? Search for AWS Insiders in your podcast player. We'll also include a link in the show notes. Thank you to AWS Insiders for their support. This episode is brought to you by Miro. So when I was at Dribbble, over the 6 years, there was one tool that we would always use when we were doing cross-team collaboration. Whenever the collaboration started to get complex, we would bring in Miro. It made it incredibly easy to align stakeholders across regions and time zones and definitely teams with ease. And we were able to do all of that while being a completely remote team. It also has integrations into Jira, Azure, Rally, a lot of the tools that you're using already for product management and engineering. So you can import tasks from them as native cards, and it helps you see the big picture. It also helps stakeholders to understand what work needs to be done. It was incredibly valuable. And then they even have an estimation app that gives you a clear understanding of the work scope, lets you identify gaps, and then it has the ability for you to set clear expectations for delivery, especially when you're working across functions. So your first 3 Miro boards are free forever when you sign up today. Go to Miro.com/podcast. That's Miro.com/podcast.
So how did you guys approach the idea? You're a marketplace. So how did you approach attracting both people with projects and people that could build the projects?
Yeah, so we wrote a post about how we started with MailChimp and Woofoo. And it was really, really basic at the beginning. I mean, we had about 6 months left of runway from our funding that we had raised, which is not a lot of time, especially for building a marketplace.
Yeah.
So we started on one side. We gave ourselves a week, and we said that we were going to get at least 50 developers and designers that were pre-vetted signed up to a newsletter where we would send projects out on that Saturday. So we got the 50 about 3 days in. We contacted our immediate network. We were on Dribbble, we were on Zerply, on Twitter, searching through Twitter bios, reviewing portfolios, had it all managed and hacked together in a Google Doc, signed everybody up through MailChimp. And then we were accepting projects through the Woofoo form. And projects were a big challenge because you sort of need people who need something right now. So we actually were working with some of our initial members from Ooomf when it was in the app discovery space. So that was sort of the initial projects that we had there. But in order to keep sustaining that, that's really where we came up with these ideas for content. So the writing, how much to make an app, all was sort of born because we had no money and about 6 months left or we were dead.
That's, so let's talk a little bit about that content. When you're writing your content, are you targeting one or the other, or do you find that your articles are broad enough to appeal to both bases there?
Yeah, so we focus right now on articles that will cater to both sides. So whether you're a developer, a designer, or someone who might post a project, we approach our content as a very broad sort of perspective. And we look at just trying to teach something that was usually interesting to me, or somebody who's writing the post, something that I came across, like coffee versus beer. I was trying to figure out if I should have a coffee or a beer right now to write a better blog post. And we actually had ran out of water in Montreal that day. So they shut the water off. And I'm like, should I have a beer right now? I don't even know what I'm going to write. And I'm like, all right, I'll just write about that. That was actually our second post ever on Medium. And it was crazy. Like that when that went off, it's something sort of clicked that if you write high quality things, there's an opportunity now with sites like Medium and Subtle and what Quora is doing to really help you with the distribution.
Yeah, we've experimented a lot with Medium, and it's been an awesome tool for us. And blogging in general has been great, but what you guys do with your other tool marketing, how much to make an app, Unsplash, these other projects that you do, we get ideas, we get ideas all the time for little side projects, but we have a hard time deciding what is going to be worth the time to do and put out versus going ahead and just writing a blog post. How have you kind of made that decision in the past of putting these things out, and how much time are you spending on them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The way that a lot of our blog posts have formed have been, could be emails to customers or friends. So the post we wrote about how to get press, for example, started as an email from a customer. So that was sort of the MVP or the first version of it. And what we're experimenting with now in the next few months is if a blog post is doing well, there might be something more that we could do with it. So maybe there could be a small little side project that could turn into. And I think there's those ideas that you have all the time, and we're sort of trying to harness those ideas, do something very simple, but that would take content to the next level. So how much to make an app could easily have been a blog post, but there are a few blog posts out there that exist already that are pretty good. So we thought, how could we, do something that was the next level for that? And that's why we decided to do that one as a web app, for example.
So do you guys have like a graveyard of side projects that you've kind of started to use as these marketing tools that you've decided either they were spiraling out of control or they weren't going to end up accomplishing what you wanted?
So we have a whole list of other ones that we're going to do. We've been lucky so far in the sense that the three sort of ones that we've done something with in terms of a web app, which were launched this year, How Much to Make an App and Unsplash, all did well in our eyes. So, we've been lucky in that sense, but a lot of it is we're trying to solve a problem that we're experiencing ourselves or we're seeing with our customers. So we sort of know that there's somebody out there that is going to be interested in this. And if we can keep it simple so we don't spend too much time, because I think if we spent way too much time and built this thing that's almost an app in itself, then I think the success rate would actually diminish.
What does the distribution look like for any of these tools that you put out?
In terms of
when you finish it, or when you finish it and you publish it, what steps do you take to make sure that it has a good shot at getting picked up?
Yeah, so we are constantly experimenting with that. We have probably 6 or 7 different segmented lists in MailChimp. When Medium first started, for example, we were experimenting with the featured section and how to sort of get there and what was the minimum threshold in order to get there. And what we would do is actually segment out part of our list to send just the Medium post to them and then see if that would be enough to get it there, because that was really helping to grow our audience. So we are experimenting a lot with our email lists and just sort of sending that out properly, but it's typically a combination of a Medium post and a blog post.
And the blog post is on the Ooomf blog?
Yeah, correct.
And are those different?
They're usually almost the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms
No
of
problem.
the content, when you're looking at guest posting, I saw you just had an article today on the Next Web. You've been in Lifehacker, you've been in the Buffer blog, and a lot of them are reposts of your content.
Yep.
Can you share any insight in how these opportunities are coming about?
Yeah, so the first one was Buffer, actually. So this was before we wrote Coffee versus Beer. This was before we even had one blog post on our own blog. And I sort of got this advice from Paul Jarvis. He's a web designer, awesome writer. He writes on Medium as well. He's got a couple books. He always said, write where your audience is. Don't worry about them being on your blog. If you can just go to them and they like what you're doing and you're there enough, then they will sort of naturally gravitate to your stuff. So that was sort of the initial approach. I read actually how Buffer grew with guest posting. And Leo, who's the guy over at Buffer who wrote that post, he was the head of their content. So I basically just said exactly what he said to do and pitched him on his own methods. And he said, yeah, write the post. I hadn't actually written the post yet. So I was like, okay. That was very exciting for me, but very scary because I hadn't written sort of the in-depth science-backed posts, which you see on Buffer a lot. And that's sort of the style that we write now. Yeah. That was the first one that I had done. And that ended up, TED actually picked that up and they turned it into a YouTube video as well.
Yeah,
so,
I saw that. That was huge.
Yeah, and that article was very difficult for me. I mean, it probably took me 25 to 30 hours in terms of the research and writing, because I had never written that style before. But you get faster and faster and faster the more you do it. And what you realize is, because you're spending time, crafting something that you would feel good putting out, even if nobody really sees it, you feel good, doing something that you spent a lot of time on, something that you're proud of. So that's ultimately the thing. I'm not going to publish something that I wouldn't be proud of as a writer.
What do you think set your request to Leo apart from other people? Because surely anyone that read about his strategy for getting these guest posts is probably reached out to him and others copying their email template. What do you think it was? Was it your website that he clicked through to? What made you different?
I think it was, I specifically targeted probably one of their best all-time posts. This was before, I don't think they had, an all-time list on their blog, but I had been following them for a long time. So I sort of knew, I saw this one post that they wrote about, I think it was their investor deck and how they raised like 1.5 million. And it was on startups.com. It did really well. It was picked up by a lot of people. So I was like, hey, I'm going to write a follow-up to this, because if that one did well, it's likely that people would want to sort of see something like this. And if Buffer knows that posted well, it probably increases the chances that this one could do well as well and be more interesting for them.
Oh, cool. So have you followed their technique for getting guest posts on Ooomf as well?
So what happened after that is Coffee versus Beer was one of the next ones, and that did really well. That was picked up by Lifehacker, The Next Web, was featured on Medium, Hacker News, Reddit. So what sort of ended up happening is a reputation a little bit. So we started just getting contacted from the publications rather than us going out and having to contact them. And that was lucky in a sense, but it's based off of the quality content we write, I think. And one thing that we set when we were writing content regularly, and it's become a little bit harder now, the schedule that we wanted to keep was, I'm doing sort of one post a week, and that's going to be high quality, rather than trying to do 3 or 4 that might be lower grade. I wanted to keep the standard very, very high, and the only thing I could sustain was sort of one post a week. But in the end, that was a very good thing, because every post that is on our blog is something that is a full thought out concept or idea.
Yeah. And how much are you writing each night?
I write every day. I'm probably writing between, I would say 10 to 12 hours a week.
Okay. Yeah. I'd like to you touched on a little bit before, but your philosophy on marketing, which I thought was very interesting, which is solving a problem rather than just blasting emails. And I'm wondering how you guys approach this, because when we have a list, I want to send to that list. I don't always know what to send to them. And the easiest thing is, hey, here's a discount code, or, something involving your product. But how do you approach those emails to make them more effective?
Yeah, writing has really sort of changed my thought process and approach towards any sort of email or communication. There's always an element of a story involved, and I've just seen that is super fun to sort of put together, because you have to think it out. You have to think, what is the story behind this? And if I can't come up with the story, then maybe this thing isn't worth sending to anybody. So that's sort of the philosophy that we've used, and I really enjoy it. I mean, our open rates are very high, I think, and we really focus on sending people what they've sort of signed up for. So yeah, we have a lot of different projects, but there's a very personal approach to each project, and I think that personal approach is the right way to be in communication with people. They should feel like they're talking with Michael or Matt or Joel or Mikael, not necessarily this higher entity.
And are you ever sending kind of promo emails, or all of your emails are a story or very segmented to the user that requested them?
Yeah, it's very, we try to keep it very short and sort of, here's the problem we saw, and here's the thing, it could be a thing that we're releasing, but it's, here's the thing that we're releasing to solve that problem. Because I think if you're not resonating with the problem, you're never going to care about the solution.
So why is the freelance design development problem one that you're interested or that you're passionate about solving?
So before Ooomf, probably every freelance or software project I was involved with went wrong at some point. And every different variable, it's like if anything could go wrong, it would. So I just saw there's a lot of really talented people. Some of them aren't able to work independently because the deal flow is difficult. It's hard to find good clients, and just wanted to enable people who know how to do good work to connect with the people who value that. And I think as everything evolves, every business is sort of becoming an online business, and they need that development or design expertise. You need sort of that go-to guy, but it's very challenging, especially if you're not in the space at all. You don't know the difference between back end or front end. It can be very, very daunting and scary. So we want to sort of remove all of those barriers in this space.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of people can appreciate that. So thank you, Mikael, for coming on. Really appreciate your time, kind of sharing your insight with us on
Of course.
Ooomf. For everyone out there, go to ooomf.com. That's OOOMF.com. Sign up for a project, become a vendor. It's a great, great service. So thank you, and we'll see you on the web.
Thanks, Michael. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mikael.
With no big red sign to stop me, no traffic jam delay. See, I was driving over the moon in my big hot air balloon, floating high into the darkness. I hope I get there soon. There's so many things to do, so many people I need to talk to, and they've all been waiting for me. Well, I gotta make it through.
Hey, this is Mary Beth Lassiter. Are you craving a new podcast? I've got a recommendation. Check out Gravy, the James Beard award-winning podcast that shares stories of the changing American South, brought to you through the foods we eat. It's produced by the Southern Foodways Alliance and distributed by APT Podcast Studios. Listen to Gravy on your porch during happy hour to hear about the mystery of the missing Pappy Van Winkle bourbon. Don't miss out. Follow Gravy wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey guys, welcome to The Collective. I'm Brianne Helfrich, a 26-year-old bioethics PhD student and clothing brand CEO. Welcome to my podcast where we talk all things health and wellness, navigating your 20s, and becoming the best version of yourself. So, sit down, play that episode, and join The Collective.